What if the silence you spent years learning to live with was never silence at all, but a message that simply never arrived? And this story shows that the wait, no matter how long, can still be redeemed. Eleanor Voss signed the demolition order on a Thursday morning in October, using the fountain pen her father had left her, and she did not let her hand tremble. Outside the tall windows of her office on the 12th floor of Chicago's Department of Urban Planning, the sky was the color of old pewter, and the Halsted rail station sat 5 blocks west like a beautiful wound on the face of the city. She had argued for its preservation for 11 years. She had attended every committee hearing, submitted every impact study, made every case she could with data and conviction and the particular kind of stubbornness that had carried her from junior analyst to deputy director without a single sideways step. She had lost. And now, at 42, the youngest deputy director in the department's history had learned to be practical. She told herself that as she initialed every page. The architect assigned to oversee the demolition and replacement project arrived the following Monday. Eleanor's assistant knocked twice and opened the door, and the man who walked in was someone Eleanor had not seen in 14 years. Daniel Reyes came in carrying a rolled blueprint under one arm and wearing the same kind of quiet certainty he had always carried, as though any room made more sense once he entered it. She stood. She did not extend her hand right away. Daniel stopped 2 feet inside the doorway. A beat passed between them that was longer than any pause between professionals should have been. Then he smiled carefully, like someone testing ice they suspected would not hold. "You look exactly the same," he said. "That is not true," she answered, and sat back down. It was not the reunion either of them had imagined. Though Eleanor would admit, much later, that she had imagined several versions of it over the years. Usually late at night when the insomnia came and the city hummed outside her window. In every version she had been cooler, more certain. In none of them had she felt the old pull return in her chest like a door swinging open on a room she had bricked shut a long time ago and told herself she had stopped missing. They were professional through the first week. They reviewed the site assessment together, standing on opposite sides of a drafting table. They disagreed about the salvage plan for the station's iron arches. Eleanor wanted 3 of them preserved and integrated into the new transport hub. Daniel thought the idea was sentimental and structurally complicated. She said that was rich, coming from a man who had once spent 2 years redesigning an entire building just to save a single stained glass window. He looked up from the blueprints. She had not meant to say that out loud. He said, "You remember that?" She said, "I read the press coverage." But she had not only read the press coverage, and they both understood that without saying so. Daniel Reyes had left Chicago in the late summer of 2010 with a fellowship in Barcelona and no clear plan to return. Eleanor had been 28, newly promoted, and already very skilled at deciding that what she felt was less important than what she needed to accomplish. They had been together for 2 years, and she had believed, with a fierceness she never quite examined, that he would ask her to come with him. He had not. He had kissed her at a hair and said, "This is not goodbye, it is a pause," as if love were a recording she could simply resume at a later date. She had not paused. She had continued. By the 3rd week of the Halsted project, they were eating lunch in her office because it was simpler than pretending to avoid each other, and because the work genuinely required daily decisions. The arches dispute evolved into a sustained negotiation. Daniel gradually bending towards her vision. Eleanor quietly adjusting the budget to accommodate his structural concerns. There was a rhythm forming between them that was dangerously familiar, like a song she had told herself she no longer knew the words to, only to find her mouth forming them anyway. One Tuesday, rain moving against the windows in long grey sheets, Daniel told her about the 7 years he had spent in Sao Paulo after Barcelona. Designing affordable housing in the outer neighborhoods of the city, places where the infrastructure had always arrived decades late if it arrived at all. How the work had first hollowed him out and then rebuilt him in some quieter and more permanent way. How he had come back to the United States not because he was finished but because his mother was ill, and he had stayed because she recovered, and then because Chicago was still Chicago and he had stopped finding reasons to leave again. She listened. She told him about her father's death in 2015 and how she had thrown herself into the Lakefront Corridor project as a form of grief she could make useful. She told him she had been briefly engaged in 2018 to a litigator named Marcus who was a genuinely good man, patient and steady, and with whom she had felt, in the end, absolutely nothing that resembled the thing she had once felt so easily and lost so completely. Which was its own specific kind of sorrow. Daniel was quiet for a moment after she said that. Then he said, "I thought you would have reached out. After everything. At some point in 14 years. Eleanor set down her coffee. She said, "Daniel, you left without asking me to come with you." He looked at her steadily. He said, "I wrote you a letter. I wrote it 3 weeks after I arrived in Barcelona. I sent it to your flat on Dearborn Street. There was a train ticket inside it, open date, and I asked you to come." The room reorganized itself around her in a way she felt physically. She thought of the flat she had sublet 48 hours after he boarded that flight. The urgency of the boxes. The new place on Clark Street where she had worked very hard at becoming a woman who did not wait for things that did not come. The letter had never found her. And she had spent 14 years constructing her life around an absence that had never been what she believed it was. Neither of them spoke for nearly a full minute. Then Eleanor stood and walked to the window because she needed to look at something that was not his face while she decided what she was allowed to feel. "This does not change anything," she said. She meant it as a wall. "I know," he said quietly. He meant it as a grief. The demolition of the Halstead Station's main hall was scheduled to begin the first week of November. 2 days before the crews arrived, a preservation coalition filed an emergency injunction and the project was suspended pending judicial review. Eleanor spent for days in depositions and legal conference calls, managing the city's response, moving between City Hall and her own tangled conscience. She had signed those papers. She had done her job. She had also, she was beginning to understand, done it while believing something about herself and about that building that was not entirely honest. On the 4th day, Daniel called her. Not about the injunction. He said, "I am submitting a revised design proposal tomorrow. One that preserves the entire main hall and builds the new transport hub around it. It will cost more. The city may reject it and terminate my contract. But I think you should see it before I send it in." She said, "Why are you telling me this?" He said, "Because you were right about this building. You have been right since before I arrived, and I was too focused on what the client wanted to see it clearly. Someone should say so." She asked whether he was talking about the station or about something else. He said that honestly, he could no longer separate the two. He had stopped trying. She met him at the station that evening, 1 hour before security locked the perimeter for the night. They walked through the main hall wearing hard hats and carrying work lights, moving past the iron arches that caught the artificial glow and spread it in long warm shadows across the marble floor. Daniel showed her the revised proposal on a tablet. A transport hub that grew organically around the preserved hall, the old bones of the building becoming the structural and aesthetic heart of something entirely new. It was the best work she had seen from him. It was also, she understood, the kind of proposal that would cost him the client relationship he had spent months establishing. She said, "This could end the contract for you." He said, "Some things matter more than the contract." She looked at him in the half-dark of a building she had tried to save and almost surrendered. She thought of a letter sent to an address she had already left. She thought of 14 years lived inside a story she had told herself about being abandoned, when the true story had always been more complicated and more forgiving than that. She said, "Come to dinner." Not a project meeting. Dinner. He said yes before she had finished asking. The city accepted Daniel's revised proposal in January, after the Preservation Coalition withdrew the injunction and the Budget Committee approved the additional funding. Eleanor had presented the long-term case for the project herself: revenue projections, tourism modeling, transport impact studies, the kind of thorough and unassailable argument she had always been capable of making when she believed in something without reservation. The Halstead Station's main hall would stand. The iron arches would stay. Construction on the new transport hub surrounding it would begin in spring. On the last Friday of February, Eleanor stood in that same main hall, now cleared of hazard materials and filled with the clean mineral smell of old stone, and watched Daniel cross the marble floor towards her. He was carrying 2 coffees from the cart outside and wearing the particular expression he only allowed when no one professional was watching. She had not erased the years between them. She had not pretended the wound of that lost letter was fully healed or that trust rebuilt itself overnight simply because the explanation had turned out to be innocent. But she had stopped treating love as something that required perfect conditions before it could be allowed to exist. The letter had gone to an empty flat. She had built a careful life around its absence. He had spent years believing her silence was an answer. None of it had been a choice. All of it had led them here anyway, to this hall, to this morning, to the particular quality of light that came through the old arched windows in February and fell across the marble floor like a promise the building had been keeping all along. He handed her the coffee and his hand stayed near hers a moment longer than the exchange required. She said, "The arches are going to be extraordinary when the light comes through in spring." He said, "Yes. They are." And the station held them inside its old walls, and outside Chicago went on being grey and relentless and alive, and neither of them was in any hurry to leave. Did you enjoy today's story? Do stay with me for a moment. Do let me know in the comments, which city are you watching from? Did this message touch you? And if you have ideas for future stories, please share them. Your suggestion may become our next video. Leave a like if this message meant something to you. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. If you think someone else would appreciate this message, do share it. And if you'd like to support the channel, have a look at the links in the description. Some are affiliate links, which support us at no extra cost to you. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video.